Afternoon, everyone. This is Quill at Curious Curio Conjurations in Medford, Wisconsin. So today we're doing a Mexican Loteria divination. The Mexican Loteria, just if you guys don't know, you haven't seen the previous videos, these cards are initially used for a game that's kind of similar to bingo in just kind of secular Mexican culture. They are not a traditional divination tool for the Mexican people. This is kind of something that's more modern, more new. So some people kind of liken them to, to tarot cards. They are not tarot cards. They are they kind of have their own unique voice behind them. They're very blunt. They will kind of say, hey, this is a truth that's staring you in the face and we need you to acknowledge it. So they are different than tarot cards. They definitely have a different flavor to them. But the one really positive thing about these is that they are super easy to come by. You can go to Mexican grocery stores, you can go to Walmart, and you can pick these up for a couple of dollars. They're not super expensive. So today's lesson is actually, this is La Chalupa, and it is the little boat, okay? And so kind of the idea behind this card is that you see a lady, that she's in this beautiful flower and fruit laden canoe. She's dressed very, very nice, and she's just taking slow, small paddles. She's not a speedboat. She is not going super fast. She's kind of on like a lazy, winding kind of river and kind of going at her own pace. And when we are looking at the bigger divination of the day that we did, that's in the playlist, divination of the day, with today's date, when we're looking at this and in the context of that divination as a truth that we need to be confronted with, is that we may be pushing ourselves a little too hard to change too quickly. And when we do that, we cannot sustain the change we make. So we'll revert back to kind of our old habits. So if you go on a crash diet, all of a sudden, you drop 40 something pounds, and then, you can't sustain the exercise. Maybe you get sick and laid up and you can't get back into your routine. You gain the weight back and then some. That's kind of an example of that. What the universe is trying to say here is that making little changes, tiny changes. Let's say you're losing weight and you start with a salad every night. You just change one of your meals, just one. You don't have to change the whole routine overnight. It's going to be a shock to your body anyway. Or maybe you go to the doctor and you say, oh, I have, this condition, but I want to lose weight. How can I best do that? Maybe you have a thyroid condition, or you have kidney problems, or I don't know, whatever it is. You go to your doctor, you go to a medical professional, and you say, I want to make a change. And that doctor recommends some changes. Some people get upset with that because it's not a super speedy, fast ticket to losing weight and making them all better overnight. That's because those don't really exist. There's very, very few things out there that are immediate, huge, explosive, solutions to things that we're trying to conquer. So kind of something to keep in mind is if you are in the habit of, if you are making new habits, if you are setting your own rules, setting your boundaries, making changes to yourself for personal growth, like you're on a process of wanting to be better than your ancestors, wanting to be, better than in your current life circumstance, and you're on a journey growing, really don't underestimate those little changes that you make. And how to get there is, again, talk with a professional, talk with someone else about what changes you could make that seem realistic. This includes, do you have the social supports for this? Do you have financial support for this? Do you have, the right insurance? Whatever it is, do you have these things to maintain this thing that you want to change? Now, go to your journals. I'm big on journaling. Journaling really helps me out. I have bipolar disorder, and so journaling every day really helps. And list your fears, okay? Maybe you're like really afraid to lose weight, and you're afraid to, you're afraid to be hungry. I mean, that's valid, okay? When you are consuming less calories, you could feel hungry. Maybe that triggers a painful memory for you, and you don't want to encounter it. That's a valid concern. Write that down, and again, share that with either a therapist, your friends, a clergy member at a church, someone that you can trust, or just sit on it and say, okay, so maybe there is a way to lose weight without being hungry all the time. Maybe I could do smaller snacks or whatever is recommended, whatever you think is feasible for you. This is just an example. This is not like a literal thing that's happening. So if you're journaling out those fears, you're sitting with those fears instead of running away from those fears, you'll actually get kind of a better result than if you were just pushing it back and just what I call fleeing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what sticks. A lot of people will know, they'll have a kind of a need inside them. They'll know that they need to make a change, but they're not exactly sure how to do it. So they will start scrambling and they will try everything because, they're just trying to make it better. I mean, it's admirable, but if you're scrambling and you don't really have the research and the thought behind what you're doing or the support behind what you're doing, the chances of your success are pretty low. If you have an idea, okay, this is what's recommended to me to make a change. Like someone says, I have this really awesome therapist and she's open to people being pagan. That's actually that was a big one for me. I did not want to go to a therapist that wouldn't respect the fact that I'm pagan, that I'm polyamorous, that I identify as queer, that I go by they, them. I wanted someone who embraced all those things, and it was a journey to find that person. It was an online option that helped, that is still helping. And so that was like one of my struggles, but someone mentioned to me that they knew a system that would work, and I didn't say, okay, click the button, pay for the stuff overnight, go to that therapist and everything was better. It was the process of, okay, part of the thing with going to a therapist was like, oh man, I have to go relive my traumatic childhood. Do I want to relive that again? And I wrote that down as a fear. I said, that is a fear. And then after a couple of days, I read that again and I said, okay, but it's not going to go away if I don't acknowledge it. Things aren't going to get better unless I do something differently than I've been doing before. I had to make sure that I could afford it financially. That's actually part of the reason I started a little small business, was able to afford things like that weren't necessarily covered under the insurance I currently have. So I worked at an idea to kind of get what I needed, and I did it in stages. I did it in very small changes. I knew that financially, again, this is something that bipolar people struggle with. I make impulsive buys, and so I had to make sure that I was curbing that habit. Like I just said, okay, I'm gonna limit. I didn't quit thrift stores and garage sales overnight. I love those things. But what I did was I limited how many times I went there. So I just said, okay, I'm not gonna go today. I'm gonna wait till tomorrow. If I still have this overwhelming need to buy something tomorrow, then I'll go with it. And really what started to happen there was I didn't have a need because I was filling it with something else. Little trick with impulsive behaviors. And I kind of started spending more time on researching and, researching my mental illness, researching what treatments were out there for me, stuff like that. So again, little things, small process, big change, because now I've got my own business. This summer's been absolutely awesome for me. And I'm seeing a therapist that is really, really helping me out, and I'm doing divination. So just kind of some of the ideas you can get, that if you're struggling, some things that Mexican Loteria can teach you, because just by itself, it's like, oh, that's a really nice card. It looks pretty. It looks like a little postcard. But when you really, really start to dig into the meaning behind these cards, you can learn so much about yourself, so much about, kind of like your shadow self, your subconscious, because you're taking the time to focus on something and look at something. And that is what Mexican Loteria divination excels at. So thank you so much for listening and watching and learning along with me. That's kind of the point of these videos, is to teach people. Divinations are great and I love giving them to you, but I also want you guys to learn how to do them yourself. So thank you so much for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you so much, so very much, for all the appointments you've made on my Facebook, Curious Curio Conjurations. Thank you so much, and you have an excellent day.